The latest game-changing update just dropped for Automobilista 2 with some fairly significant changes that genuinely are game-changing, as well as some absolutely fantastic new content. So in this video I'm going to tell you what's great and why Automobilista 2 is still a bit of a soggy fish at times. Remember to subscribe so you can have the power to unsubscribe when I say something you disagree with. Click the like button, it doesn't do anything at all. And of course a huge thank you to all our channel members and supporters, donors and people that financially allow us to be here on the internet. Without you, we wouldn't have this channel. Thank you very much. Let's get on with the video. First of all, positives, and there is some actually really fantastic stuff that's happened with this update, and certainly stuff I haven't noticed with the previous versions of Automobilista 2. And the biggest thing with this update is the netcode and car contacts in multiplayer seem to be way better. We were doing racing with viewers on our rando hosted session that you could just host from within the game, which is actually a fantastic feature of this title. You could just host a multiplayer session and people could jump in, no fiddling really needed. Also you can fill it with AI if you want to, so if you've just got two friends or maybe you just want to play with yourself. Sim racers love to play with themselves, don't they? Well, you can fill up a server and then if someone happens to be under in, you can have a nice race still. But yeah, now even when you're just hosting stuff yourself, the netcode is really good. You can have really nice car contacts without it causing the cars to stick together, which was something that was a massive issue with Project Cars 2 and then basically every version of Automobilista 2 since then. Now you can actually have a bit of door banging action. At times it's on a par with like Le Mans Ultimate and Race Room, and in some ways better, which I didn't think I'd be saying that about Automobilista 2. We were doing some really good cracking side by side door banging 90s BTCC style race technique driving with without anything crazy happening. There are limits. You'll find the really fast cars on oval, some weird stuff happens, and with the shifter carts, weird stuff happens. But for the bulk of driving with most vehicles on normal racetracks, with people under 150 ping, the netcode is absolutely fantastic. Much better than netcode that you find in sims like iRacing, for example. Which sure, iRacing has fantastic smoothing, but just tap someone gently in iRacing and see what happens. It's not a good time. So the networking stuff that they've done with this, absolutely bloody good. And I think for the type of people that play Automobilista 2, like to do jumping racing, and you know, just want to have a bit of fun driving into each other, but also racing properly, but racing properly aggressively, this change will actually be one of the more significant changes that's happened recently. Now, as you can see on the screen, we are driving the new Lamborghini. There's a couple of Lamborghini stuff that's come out with this latest DLC update. I'll be honest, we've only driven the new 2005 Lamborghini, not the older Lamborghini cars, and I'm sure the older ones are probably more fun to drive than the newer car actually, but we'll have to try that in another stream another time. But this new Lamborghini, really good fun to drive. Nice audio as well, sounds incredibly loud even when you turn it down, but you know, I think people will like that. Who doesn't like your ears to feel like they're being reverberated off? Car model, fantastic. Really pleasant to drive this vehicle, to throw it around. If you're a fan of Automobilista 2 handling, I think you'll get on with this vehicle. It feels really nice and polished. It drives like an Automobilista 2 car. So be aware of that. Things have not changed. It's Automobilista 2 in how it drives. But if you like Automobilista 2 already and you like the content in it, I think you'll really enjoy driving this. And when we were racing it with our viewers, subscribe and click the like button, follow us on Twitch. When we were racing it, we had a really good race with it. This was the first race here that you're watching. We just jumped in, hosted a session, and it was knitting between the Lamborghinis. Close driving, bit of door banging, nice bit of speed to this car. quite a bit faster, I think, than a GT3 car. Quite slidey, but good fun racing. I was enjoying driving this. It was fun gameplay, and to be honest, when it comes to driving simulators and driving games, fun factor is really all that matters. And I think you would actually have to be quite miserable and dead inside to not enjoy racing this Lamborghini here. As I say, we need to try the older cars. I think most people generally prefer the older cars to the newer cars. Why didn't I try it whilst we were live streaming? I don't know. I was too busy distracted thinking about flying a glider in the Himalayas. But, you know, absolutely awesome stuff with this car. What you also find with Automobilista 2 is they keep adjusting the default force feedback settings. In the past, I would have said you had to use a custom force feedback file. I really quite liked using a bog standard rack steer force feedback file, which basically removes everything other than the steering rack. Did a video on that ages ago. If you Google that, you can see what we're talking about there. But I will say now, since a few updates ago, going back a few months, I think the default force feedback is actually really quite good in Automobilista 2. It's one of the simulators where the force feedback really does communicate what's going on, and you get to choose between if you want force feedback that's got loads of detail and immersive stuff, or if you just want very raw force feedback, or you can just dial it in however you want. And I think this simulator will probably feel good on just about every wheel on the market. I would definitely say, you know, stuff like Le Mans Ultimate, Assetto Corsa Evo, even Race Room and stuff would really benefit if they had as much force feedback detail and information or adjustability that this has with its force feedback. But crucially, as I say, in the latest versions of this, and with this update, game-changing update, the default force feedback files are actually really quite good with this. So you're not going to need to mess around with settings and things. Just use the default force feedback, or maybe default plus, and set your force feedback up on your wheels so it's not too strong, it's not clipping. Set it in game to whatever strength you want for the car, and I think most people will have a really good time with it. You'll be able to feel what the vehicle's doing. Reza have done a good job of making sure that that's all sort of jump in and play, jump in and have fun, jump in ready. And again, at the risk of being far too positive, I have to say as well, we were doing a lot of races with the default car setups, and I think they've done a really good job on the default setups being perfectly drivable. Generally, they're on the sort of neutral side of setup, but they're not chronically understeery, which is a very common problem with a lot of simulators' default setups. They're perfectly passable setups. So again, you could get this update, you could jump in with this Lamborghini, and you will have an okay time driving it. If you mess with setup, I would personally probably increase settings that get it on the nose a bit more and rotate it a bit more. But fixed setup racing here, with everyone else having a fixed setup, and it was quite drivable and perfectly fun as a jump-in experience. Now, before we delve into the negatives, I can't always be positive. Sometimes we have to be a bit of a negative Nancy. I will also say as well, what really stands out with AMS2 is the single player and AI. As part of the testing of this update, we initially just jumped into a single player race and set the difficulty. I think it's on like 90 or something. I can't remember, but what have we set it to? It's a moderately hard difficulty. And we had a full grid of cars and we just drove with them. And the AI put up a good fight. They battled us a bit. They overtook us. We overtook them. They were battling each other. The AI in Automobilista 2 is way better to drive against than the AI in most simulators on the market, which again is particularly pertinent if you're looking for a sim to just jump into and race some cars and tracks and have a blast, especially with a VR headset. You're probably going to be doing that against AI. You're probably not going to be doing that against real people. This doesn't really have ranked racing or anything in this. There's some leagues and things, but, you know, most of the time people are going to be driving with friends casually or against AI. And, yeah, the AI, again, really, really good. Great. You'll have a great time with it, especially if you pop on your VR headset. And on the topic of VR headsets, it's worth pointing out that they've been doing some work with anti-aliasing in this title. We didn't get to fiddle around with it, but that's probably worth investigating. Check out the Automobilista 2 forums for that. But then also, they've done some optimization in the release notes for CPU and LOD and just general performance. So again, if you've got a VR headset, if you don't have a supercomputer, these kind of things can have a big impact on how immersive things feel. The higher the frame rate, the better the frame timing, and the smoother the image, the better it will be in VR. And of all the simulators, Automobilista 2 is easily the best looking and easiest to run racing simulator or racing game in general for VR headsets. You're not going to be able to run anything else as close as well as you'll be able to run Automobilista 2 with VR high resolutions and as high frame rates, with it looking as good as Automobilista 2 does. You know, it's all very well having stuff like Evo that looks amazing with a 5090, but it doesn't run very well in VR, you know. It's all very well having a game that looks super shiny and fantastic, but if you can't hit the frame rates, what's the point? AMS2 looks fantastic and also runs really well, and the further improvements by Reza on that side of things I think will be really welcome, especially to people playing in high resolutions, and as I say, people that don't have supercomputers playing in VR. Also, AMS2 runs on a Steam Deck. Very few games, especially driving simulators, run on a Steam Deck. It is pushing things a bit on the Steam Deck. You might be sort of in the low 35, 40 FPS at times, but we've managed to play it on the Steam Deck and get it to be passable. So that's another thing keeping in mind. There you go. Far too much positivity, guys. I know it's breaking your brains. Your ears are bleeding. So on to the negatives. We've got to get it in there. Sadly, unfortunately, it is still the case that Automobilista 2, everything in it drives a bit like a hovercraft. I do think Reza have dialed things in. I do think they've progressively improved things. I think the last update with the Formula V and the new Formula V, I think that drove a lot better, and slower cars, it's less noticeable. But everything in Automobilista 2, honestly, it feels like you're driving a rallycross car on tarmac. It doesn't feel like slicks that are biting into the road and on the limit. You are basically drifting every single corner. It wants you to push things through the corners like a maniac. That's just how this simulator wants to be played, and it's how you have to drive it. I do think a benefit of that, if you're not the most precise of driver in terms of like really nicely balancing a car just on the limit and slightly under the limit onto the limit, if you're a bit of a agricultural stampy foot driver and you also like to wiggle your wheel round a lot and you like to be super aggressive, you might really enjoy how Automobilista 2 drives. I also think if you're playing it with a gamepad, it's going to be generally a lot more accommodating due to the sort of wide controllable slip and the mega steering wheel response, and then also the mega throttle rotational response. It's kind of weird, this sim, how it really doesn't respond to the brake pedal so much. It's quite reluctant to turn it on the brake, but then the moment you tickle that throttle pedal, it's mega hook up like you're driving some kind of insane lock diff go-kart. Doesn't matter what car you're driving. Again, to be clear, Reza, I think, have generally dialed down the Project Cars 2 behaviour, but it's the same thing. It is there. That's the meta of driving. This is the Project Cars 2 style of driving, and now the Automobilista 2 style of driving. I think a lot of people could enjoy it, but if you're really used to being a bit more precise, even stuff like Race Room, where you've got to pay more attention to how you're sort of rotating the vehicle and the roll of the vehicle and the mass of the vehicle, with Race Room still an incredibly slidey simulator and very forgiving, and Race Room makes you want to drive into understeer, it begs you to push into understeer, Race Room still feels a lot more less hovercrafty than this, less like rallycross than this. iRacing, well, in that you can't even balance on the limit properly without it all braking, so that's on the other far extreme. I'd say the original Assetto Corsa is pretty much bang in the middle, and why most people think AC1 is pretty much the best home sim at the moment for capturing the basic driving approach. So if you're more on that AC or even further towards the iRacing type of driving mechanics, then I think AMS2 will probably drive you insane. But if you're less picky, maybe you're not that practiced at sim racing, maybe you're just approaching it casually, or maybe you just don't care and you like to slide around a bit, then, you know, it doesn't really matter, does it? And again, I think the force feedback, though, does really help to make up for the kind of bizarre, overly stiff but very slidey handling. Yeah, I don't know how else to put it. Pop a VR headset on, though, race with your friends, and you probably won't care so much. Especially if you're racing with AI, probably won't care so much. This, as I always say, I think this is kind of like a great simulator for new people generally to jump into and just have a good time. Just have a good time racing in VR. Have a great immersive experience. Amazing graphics, amazing tracks, content from Brazil, content from all over the world, old stuff, new stuff, all in the game. Don't need to get any mods or anything. You know, you can buy the DLCs if you want to, but you could just try the basic stuff for, like, I said, like £5 or something on sale. Get the basic game. You'll have a bloody good time. And then they've set servers up so you can join a whole bunch of servers without having certain content if your mates have got it, you know. So what more could you want? That is basically the Automobilista 2 latest update rundown from the bold git with the stupid big nose. I hope you enjoyed this video. Was it game-changing enough for you? Well, let me know in the comments, but most importantly, give me 2 teapots and a fish if you do let me know in the comments if you got this far in the video. Till the next one, guys, happy tea drinking, happy sim racing, 360 no scope, take care, and goodbye.